Let's call into order the January 6th school board workshop. I want to thank everybody. First off, Happy New Year, and hopefully everybody got rested up for a start of 2023. So obviously we've got the agenda. We do have time slotted for each person or each firm that's here that's going to present to us. Have we heard back from the firm that canceled? Nothing yet, right? So looking at, there's about 30 minutes. Can we move it to maybe about 45 minutes apiece? And that way we can take a little bit of that time up. Just communicate with me if they are able to jump on early. If you didn't see your email, just for the board members and public, a firm that was going to present pulled out the last minute. So we had them in a time slot of 10:30 to 11. I'm going to ask the 12 o'clock. We're going to try to reach out to the 12 o'clock presenters, see if they can move up. If they can't, we'll just take that break. But we normally we had a 45-minute break. So we got about 15 minutes that we can work with for the two presenters that are going to be here, Andrea and Bill, that are going to be here. And here you got about 15 minutes we can add each, so 7.5 minutes onto your 30 that you already had slotted. So first one we've got up is the Florida School Board Association, FSBA. Andrea Messina, come on up. And board members, we are on Granicus.
Oh, we are?
So if you want to pull up Granicus for speakers.
Did not sign into Granicus.
My question for you would be, do you want to get through your presentation and then answer questions? Or do you want to answer questions through the presentation? I know sometimes answering questions during the presentation can get into holes, and all of a sudden we've gone somewhere you didn't want to be. So it's completely up to you.
I would defer to you, but I'm happy to go through the presentation, which may preempt some of the questions.
I'd like to, let's go through the presentation, and then we can get questions after.
All right.
So,
Thank
all
you.
yours.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yes.
I think some of us are not logged into Grant.
I did not log into Granicus.
That's fine. No worries. You don't have to write this minute. If we're going to ask questions at the end, it'll be okay.
Do you want me to give you a moment?
Could you please, yeah?
Sure.
I'd rather get signed in now, to be honest.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sign in. And
Amanda comes and does it all the
Oh.
time for me, so
Amanda, yeah.
I'm gonna write it.
and then you've given us a physical packet of your presentation as well.
Right.
Put you on the spot, huh?
Where is the link? I don't even see the link.
It should be like the bottom of your, if you go to the start button, Granicus.
It says I legislate.
Oh, it's I legislate. That's right.
Okay, still don't see it. Miss Means, if you don't mind.
We'll do it on the break. I will reset your password.
Oh, all right, that's fine. Okay.
We can work on that.
Yeah, I have my password, I just don't see the link.
We can just go around and ask questions.
That's
for the
fine.
first one. No problem.
That's all right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, board members, and Happy New Year. I do want to start today by reminding you of something that I said to you a few weeks ago, which is that choosing the next leader for your school district is the single most important decision that you're going to make as board members. And I also want to remind you of the number of appointed superintendents in the state, the number who have been placed since 2020, so there's a lot of new fresh faces across the state, and then the likely or current openings that exist right now, and there are clearly 6, potentially 7. I do want to let you know in full transparency that last night FSBA, we just were committed to our 3rd superintendent search. Since the last time we spoke, we've picked up 3 superintendent searches. And so that will affect some of our ability to be flexible with your dates and times, but I want to be fully transparent on that, and so I can answer questions about that as we move forward. We've assisted a number of Florida school districts. I think I mentioned this to you before, and like I said, we just picked up our 3rd. We're going to be working with Charlotte County, we're going to be working with Brevard County, and we're going to be working with Osceola County. We do know Manatee County, and this is one of the things that we believe we bring to the table more than any other firm could possibly. I'm going to introduce my colleagues in just a moment. We've got Dr. Bill Vogel here, who many of you know because he's worked with your district for years now. He's a former superintendent of the year in the state of Florida, and he's worked in a number of school districts. He also currently works training superintendents with the Superintendents Association. We also have Mr. John Reichert, who is a former human resources expert. So we have the superintendent perspective with Dr. Vogel. We have the board perspective with me. If you maybe don't remember or for whatever reason weren't in a room when I said it, I'm a three-term school board member from Charlotte County. So I was a school board member, hired many superintendents while I was on the school board, well, two, and then since I've been working with FSBA, we've worked with a number of districts, and then Mr. Reichert is the HR perspective. So we kind of look at ourselves as a three-legged stool. We provide on-site representation for all of the activities associated with the superintendent search. Bill and John are the ones who will typically run the, if you decide to have community forums, if you decide to have any sort of targeted input sessions with any employee groups, community groups, parents, things like that. Bill and John are the ones that would typically do that. Focus groups of any sort, students, all that. And then we would come to your board meetings when we would want to bring forward items that the board would want to approve, things like your timeline, your qualifications and qualities, where you want to advertise, all of those decisions that have to be made along the way. We come to the board meetings and we work with the board to get to those decisions. We do use a team approach. We ask that initially you identify a district staff liaison. For many districts, that happens to be the board clerk or the board secretary or the board, whatever role you might have. Sometimes it has been a board attorney, sometimes it has been a chief of staff. It just depends on the structure of a school district, who you'll identify to be that point person. We also will do some interfacing along the way with your school board attorney and your HR staff, as well as your district communications and your IT staff. Those are the bulk of the staff members that we'll work with. We typically would work with outside organizations as you identify them. If you want to work with your foundation on a reception, if you want to work with your chamber, if you want to work with, whatever groups you decide want to be involved in your search, we work with them as well. So we look at it as a team approach, the three of us, any one of whom are interchangeable at any time. All of us can do all of the functions of the search. So we see ourselves as a team. But everything we do is personalized for Manatee County based on the priorities and needs identified by the board. So we sit down, we'll talk with the board right from the start, and we will gather the information, get the direction from you. We do have some resources that we share that we've developed for both your staff liaison, which will walk them through every activity involved in the search, tell them what's, what we need, whose responsibility, who we need to bring to the table, IT, communication staff, things like that. And then we also have a key resource for school board members that really walks you through the key decisions that you'll be making along the way. We have a recommended search timeline, which is adjusted. No district has ever followed this timeline exactly, but it kind of gives you an idea of the length of time for each of the elements throughout the search, and then that becomes flexible and accommodating to whatever the district's needs are. When we talk about the search, as I mentioned before, there are some things that are non-negotiables: sunshine law, public records law, and public input along the way. Those are going to happen through every aspect of your search. But we like to start with a planning phase. And in the planning phase, the first thing that we do is help your IT staff establish a website portal. We believe it's really important for your community to know every activity associated with the superintendent search, and all of that would get placed on the portal. So this meeting would be linked, and everyone could watch whatever they wanted to watch associated with it, if they wanted to read the minutes or watch the video or anything. And then everything, the timeline, all of the applications, everything gets put up on that portal, including if you have a community survey, the results of that survey. Everything is transparent because we believe that that is really important for your community to know what's going on along the way. We start with, as I mentioned, a pre-search interview where we sit down with the board. We really want to get a feel for what the board believes are the top priorities moving forward and where you currently stand. So we'll be asking questions like, what is your relationship with your business community? What is your relationship with your parent community? What is your relationship with your legislators? What is your relationship with your staff? Where are you in your strategic plan? Where are you with regard to growth? All of those things so that you all have some common agreement and we know what those priorities are for the board, so that when potential candidates talk to us and ask questions of us, we know because we've had the conversation with you. But we also recommend that anyone who's interested in applying watch that particular workshop so they can hear for themselves what the board thinks. They can also see the board dynamics, how the board interacts with each other, which, as you know, is an important aspect when someone's considering applying in a school district. So that's our very first activity when we work with a school district. The next thing that we like to do is establish a timeline. And typically the timeline starts from the back. When do you want the person to start? And then is there going to be any overlap? You're going to have contract negotiations. You're going to have a meeting to make the decision. You're going to have interviews, and it all backs up from there. So we build your timeline typically around meetings that you already have scheduled to the largest degree possible. But there may be times when you would have to add a special meeting because there's an element of the search that needs to move forward, and maybe your currently scheduled meetings don't accommodate the timeline that you've agreed to or that you put forth. We also determine any advisory role. If you're going to, for any reason, establish a community advisory group, some boards do, some boards don't. There are benefits to it, there are drawbacks to it. As I mentioned before, the board cannot absolve itself of the responsibility to hire the superintendent, and thusly, if you do impanel an advisory board, they advise the board and bring suggestions to the board, but the board makes decisions on behalf of the district related to superintendent search. Then we move to the input phase, which typically we would recommend an electronic survey. We like to look at your strategic plan to develop that survey, and we also look at the types of skills needed to be a superintendent so that people can have some weigh in on that and identify what's important to the community. We also strongly encourage face-to-face or virtual forums. We've had to do, during COVID, we had to do some virtual forums completely. In fact, we did one search that was almost complete virtual because of the limitations at the time, but it is better to have face-to-face if you can. And now we've had some districts that have the capacity to do both, to be able to do a hybrid version. And then if you have any advisory groups, as I said, you may have a community advisory group, a staff advisory group, student advisory groups, or you may have a group that consists of all of them. Then you move to the application phase. It's during the application phase, or just before that, you finalize the qualifications and qualities that you're looking for in your superintendent. And as I mentioned last time we spoke, what you're looking for in your next superintendent is probably different than what you looked for in your last one, or what you'll be looking for in the one following it, based on the needs of the district at the time you're seeking a superintendent. So you'll finalize the qualifications and qualities. You'll determine where you want to advertise. We certainly have data and research and recommendations on where people go to find these types of jobs. And you'll accept applications. Not you. Typically, we would accept the applications to kind of keep that arm's length from anyone in your district. We like to make sure that the district doesn't, people in HR, for example, don't get any accusations of holding back a resume, putting forward a resume. For any reason, we just want to make sure there's no impropriety, not that your district would be guilty of that, but we want to make sure that it's above reproach. And so we typically would accept the applications. During that application phase, we are also out recruiting. So there are, based on the profile that you're looking for a superintendent, and based on the demographics and the profile of your school district, there are certain types of superintendents, because of their experiences, that would be good fits that we would reach out to, see if they're interested, try to encourage them. Additionally, during the input phase, we ask every forum that we have, if people know of someone that they think would be good, give us their name. And then we track down all of those leads so that anybody who's been recommended. We've talked to, we've explained what's the board is looking for and encouraged them to apply. But as you know, Florida is a public records state, and so there are some people who will hesitate to apply because of the public nature of the superintendent or any position in Florida. So people from out of state sometimes will apply, and even though we're very clear about the Florida Public Records Law, they sometimes don't understand the Florida Public Records Law, and you may see people apply and then withdraw, because once they've applied in Florida, their name becomes public. The current board with which they're working hears about it. If they haven't had that conversation with their board because they thought it was going to be private, it can become a problem for them at home. So we're very clear that it's public, because in Florida it's public, but not everybody understands that. Then we go through the vetting stage. The vetting stage includes the reviewing of the applications to see who meets the qualifications that you've identified. I think I mentioned last time I was here, you'll get a number of applications that are not qualified. But they're hopeful, and they may be a great superintendent someday, but they just may not be currently qualified based on what you're looking for. So we review all the applications. You will see every application that gets submitted. We don't withhold any, we don't keep any back, we don't present the board certain favorites that for whatever reason somebody might, we don't weigh in on that. We're agnostic. We bring all of them to the board. We will conduct research on the top candidates that you identify, or if you have a community group, or if you're having semifinalists, we begin to do some research on the top candidates, and then we present the applications to the board in full. We don't hold any back. We recommend, depending on the number of applications you get, building in a semifinalist phase. And it's in the semifinalist phase that the board says, okay, these are the qualified people, let's continue to consider them, but let's give them another filter to determine who we want to bring in for the final interviews. So we would develop questions with the board, 5 board members. Typically we would have 5 questions. Some would be video, some would be written in a very short time frame. We would share the semifinalist answers to those questions with the board, begin to conduct some of the legal background searches, and then we would lead the discussion with you to get to the finalist selection, which would be the people you would bring in for the final interviews. So during the finalist phase, we would help you develop interview questions. For most boards, we work with them to develop those questions related to what your community has identified as important and your strategic plan. Hopefully those two meld, but sometimes they don't. We work with your team to coordinate all the interview logistics, and we also provide on-site assistance with the interviews. One or all of us are typically at the host hotel. We are in the lobby waiting for them to arrive from wherever they're coming from. We greet them. We make sure they have all of their information that they need, and us as a resource if anything happens, their car breaks down on the way from the hotel to here, whatever. We make sure that we're available to them. We make sure they get where they need to be when they need to be. Any number of logistics along the way that may or may not surprise you, including community tours, activities for family members, spouses. A lot of times people will bring their partner, their family spouse, who may be interested in, I don't know, arts or something. And so then we would want to try to have an activity where they can go and see the arts community so that they kind of know what might be here and available for them, so they can see the full package of the community. Once we get through the interviews, then we get to the selection phase, and so we consult with the board as requested, typically after the interviews, which initially consists of board interview, one-on-one interviews, and some community activities. Board members have a lot of information that then they will be sifting through to determine, oh my gosh, what do I do now, right? We consider it a success when you have a very difficult decision ahead of you, when all of the finalists that you've interviewed are people that you say, yep, I could work with these people and they would all be good for our district. So, gosh, how do I choose one? That's what we consider a success, when all the finalists are well positioned. So you all may have questions. You might have questions about background information. You might have questions about data from their state, any number of things. So we'll consult with board members as needed. We also then come to the board meeting where you make your final decision, and we help lead that conversation so that the chair can fully participate in the conversation if desired. Sometimes the chair leads the conversation, but we're here if you need us. Once you've determined who your superintendent is going to be by vote of the board, then we assist your legal counsel with other contracts. We have the contracts from the other Florida superintendents so they can see what the standards happen to be. And we also assist legal with any new inclusions or any contract trends, anything like that. Once you've made an offer to a candidate, once you've decided you want to hire somebody, getting from the this is our choice to a contract at the board meeting is an important phase, because we haven't seen it in Florida, but I know in other states there have been times when the offer's been made for employment and then they can't agree on a contract, and then the board ends up going to their second choice or third choice. It has happened. I've not seen it in Florida, but we do everything we can to prevent that from happening, because that's not what's best for the board and the community if we can avoid it. After the search, we're here to continue to support the board by creating successful conditions for the superintendent and the board to be engaged in the community and increase student achievement in the district. That's why we're all here. The first way to do that is to make sure that there are clear expectations of the superintendent. Board agrees to protocols. What are our communications going to be? How are we going to handle citizen complaints? Just protocols that everyone agrees to so there's no misunderstanding. Also ensuring that you guys have common goals and that the evaluation of the new superintendent is discussed right from the start. People want to know what they're going to be evaluated on, and what you determine the superintendent's going to be evaluated on, as you all know, is what's going to get done. So making sure all those things are clear from the beginning. I do want to mention that FSBA has a national network. We are a part of what is called the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searchers. We work with the other state school board associations, so when somebody from South Carolina applies, I can call my friend Scott, who's the executive over there, and his superintendent search team, and find out if they've worked with this person, under what conditions have they worked with this person, do they know anything about the dynamics between the board and this particular applicant. There's information we can get, because all across the country, people who have the same job I do work with superintendents in their states. So it's valuable and very helpful information. And we can get all kinds of interesting information, good and bad sometimes. We have extensive experience with Florida's public record sunshine laws and media outlets. We've never been accused of not producing something or retaining something, and we take great pride in ensuring that these public records and sunshine laws are primary throughout the search. We've been active. My friends here, my colleagues here have been involved before I was, but we have a long active participation in the Florida education community dating back to 1977 and being active since that time. I entered the Florida education community in 1987, so I'm only a decade behind, but the one thing I do want to stress to you, and this is really an important aspect, is that who you choose for your search firm has got to be the best fit for Manatee County. We're your school board membership association. There's a lot that we do. We do superintendent searches really well, and we have great confidence in the work that we do. But there are times when, for any reason, that we're not the best choice for a board for their superintendent search. And if for any reason FSBA may not be your best choice, I want to assure you that you can continue to call us and ask. Even you've hired another firm, but you're not sure about something, you can always call us and get whatever advice as you would as a member. Regardless of who you choose as your search firm, we're your membership organization. We're here before, during, and after, and we will continue to be here before, during, and after. And that's a really important point, because a successful superintendent search will unite the board and the community, and that's the desired outcome. And if working with FSBA for any reason isn't a uniting thing, we're not your best choice. You need to pick a firm that will unite the board and help the district move forward. Now I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your presentation. Let's just move, since we're not on Granicus, it's okay. You're first anyways, Ms. Foreman? So,
on there, but.
yep, so let's go with you. Let's just go
Okay.
right down the line with the ladies first,
Okay.
since we're gentlemen.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate what you had to say. I have got several questions. First, Orange County was, I assume that was your most recent
Yes, ma'am.
finished search. And on their site, they had 13 applicants listed. Was that the grand total of all of their applicants?
Yes, ma'am.
It was. More than half of them were out of state, which I thought was interesting. But I was a bit discouraged that it's only 13. Is that typical? And would you anticipate that to be
Well,
going forward?
I would tell you that there are a few factors that play into how many applications a district will get. One factor is the length of time of advertisement. So I'll point to Miami-Dade, who advertised for 8 days. They only had, I think, 5 applicants because they had a very short window. Orange also went with a very short window. They had a very strong internal candidate. When a district has a very strong internal candidate, and that's the person who ended up getting that job, the education community knows that this is a strong candidate because they've probably crossed paths with that person multiple times over a career. And so many people knew they had a strong internal, and that will also dissuade applications.
Thank you. I don't want to eat up everybody's time, but I do have a lot of questions. You had talked about the advisory group, and I noticed in the timeline how it meets early in this process. What is the purpose of that?
Well, it depends. I'll go back to Orange County since you brought them up. Orange County used their community advisory group to develop their community survey. Other districts have used, I'll go to Polk. Polk used their community advisory group as a screening committee to screen all of the applications to determine who met the qualifications. I'll use, give me another example.
Orange also kind of had that advisory group review the job description.
Oh, that's right. Orange County also had their advisory group review the job description. Some districts use the advisory group to be sort of the first vetting. Sarasota, for example, they used the advisory group to be sort of the first vetting. The group then decided, here are the, I think it was 11 or 12 that we think the board ought to continue to consider. That doesn't mean the board only sees those 11 or 12, but here are the ones. So the board decides if and how they will use a community advisory committee.
You got 3 other districts. If we hire you, that we're a 4th. How are you going to accommodate that? Are you going to bring in additional people? I mean, that's a lot
Yeah.
of surveys.
This is why that's why it was one of the first things I said. You know, when we spoke 3 weeks ago, we didn't have any on the books at that time. Since that time, we've picked up 3. So I will tell you, as I mentioned, it will create some challenges with flexibility. There's 3 of us, and if we have 4 searches, if something's going on the same day, that's a problem. So we have to schedule things around other commitments that we've already made. We would consider bringing in somebody, but we don't have somebody that's trained. So we would have to do the best we could to be able to accommodate. I'll tell you, I know you've worked with Bill because you know Bill, and John's been here many times working in other capacities. You know these
Saw
guys.
him with, the
They are consummate professionals, and so there's not a meeting, there's not a function, there's not an activity or an event that we would miss. But I will tell you, it's not going to be easy, and I'm going to be forthcoming on
Are you
that.
going to shut the door after us?
We're not seeking anymore. I will tell you, sometimes districts ask us for their help. We're a membership organization. We help districts because that's what we do. So I'm not aware of any other superintendent searches that are on the horizon right now. I know of some that are happening that we're not participating in. So we only have so much capacity, and I would say 3 is going to be, we've done 3 before. So we know how to do. 4 would be a challenge for us, but you know, it was a challenge when we first did 3. So we would meet that, but I understand our capacity, and if we don't have capacity, I tell people we just don't have the capacity.
You stated that you go to existing superintendents to see if there's an interest. If we hire you and place a candidate here, are you going to go and try to poach, I don't want to put it that way.
No, please do.
But, to poach that person?
We do not recruit from sitting Florida superintendents.
Oh, you don't?
Not from Florida superintendents. Unless, the only time we would communicate with a sitting Florida superintendent is if a board member gave us a name or if somebody submitted a name. And in that case, what we would say is your name has been submitted as someone who may be interested in this opening. Please see the application packet here. We personally do not, I don't think it's appropriate for us as your membership association to go from one district and pull a superintendent and put them in another. That's just not anything we would ever do. I appreciate the question, and I do see it as poaching,
Okay, all right,
not what we do.
okay. I've got others, but I'll,
It's okay, so.
I don't want to eat the time.
Just real quick, board, if you guys are okay with this, as I was just talking with Ms. Means about, we haven't heard from the other group that was supposed to be at 11 o'clock or 10:30. My suggestion would be give each person an hour.
Yes.
And so FSBA, Andrew, you still have 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then are you guys okay with that pushing back to being at 10 to 11? Is that okay? I just don't want to cut anybody off and not give fair time for us to ask questions. So board, are you all okay with that? Okay. So keep asking.
Okay.
We got 30 minutes. So, I mean,
Okay.
So keep asking, is that
I
what
mean, I'm not saying
Okay.
take up the next 30 minutes.
Probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things that you do is the research and the vetting of the candidates. I think that's where things go really, really wrong in a superintendent search. I noticed you said that you do research on the top candidates, and then you do legal background on the semifinals. Can you give a description of what each of those processes are? What are you looking at? How are you doing the research and the legal background?
I'm going to let Bill answer this question because he's if you want to come to the mic, Bill, because he's the one that is our expert in this area.
Yeah, you're asking a lot of the same stuff I got.
She is. She's asking some of the same questions I've got noted, so this is good.
Thank you. We are very familiar because we work in Florida with all of the Florida superintendents and also the potential superintendents. So we're able to, through our networks, do research on every single candidate that does apply. And if something comes up at the application phase, when they apply, we will go ahead and contact that person immediately. And we'll say, we found this, we want you to know this is going to come up. And some of the people will actually withdraw because because the board members are going to know about it. The board members know everything that we do at that particular point. Then, if they're out-of-state candidates, we're able to work through the National Affiliation Organization, which we're a member of there. Plus, we also have developed excellent relationships with other out-of-state organizations. So we're able to find out right from what the background issues are of anybody that we can bring to the board. And we'll do this throughout the process. And we also invite board members or anyone else, because once the applications are received, they're posted on the website, and they're posted on the website portal, so everybody sees those, and sometimes we get some feedback on that. Of course, we look at Google. Then, when we get to the semifinalist phase, we have a contract with Greenspoon Martyr attorneys in Orlando, and they do a comprehensive legal background of every single semifinalist. And we get those and we present those to the school board attorney who reviews them with all the board members individually. And that's before you get to that phase. So we've been very successful with really vetting candidates out and eliminating some throughout the process if they have any prior issues.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also add that the most comprehensive background check can only be performed with an offer of employment. So your HR department, one of the things that in the motion to approve a contract with the superintendent is pending meeting all district requirements or something along those lines. And your HR department can do a little bit more than we can as an outside firm, and it's Accurant is the search background that the firm uses.
You all do the personality surveys?
You know what, we do not. We've actually looked into that. We've done some research on that. There have been some lawsuits related to that from some applicants. And so, you know, we actually, there was one school district that was pursuing it and wanted to work with it, but their own legal department said it was not a good idea. I mean, we certainly have access to that, and it depends on what the board wants. We could do some things, but many of those are for coaching purposes, not necessarily hiring purposes. There's some nuances related to that most districts don't even want. Most legal departments of districts have not wanted to engage in.
And then can you explain what your guarantee is, that if we have a superintendent who leaves the first year or the second year?
Yeah, so we've worked with districts. We've actually never had anybody leave in the first year. That's just never been a part. So we certainly guarantee through the first year. However, one of the things that we have to really pay close attention to is the nature of why somebody leaves, because there's really a commitment on behalf of the board to this person as well as this person to the board. So if there are specific reasons for cause, that's when the guarantee would play in, not just without cause, and we just decided we wanted to get rid of somebody. So for 2 years with cause.
Okay. And then can you go into a little bit on the job description process, putting together a job description for a superintendent, and also I assume qualifications are part of that, but are those two different processes, and how do you bring
Bill?
people together to do that?
What we do, we feel this is one of our specialty areas. I'm sure the board would want to have some community forums or internal focus groups. So what we do is we go out to the different areas of the county. We gather information on what are the strengths of the district, what are the challenges facing the new superintendent, and also what are the qualities and qualifications that the board would like to see in the superintendent. After every one of these sessions, and as Andrea said, we can do those hybrid. We will go to a media center, and some people can join by computer. They can come in that way, or they can be present, and we do that. Once we get all of the data from that particular forum, we write it all up, and we do all the summary of it, and we give it to the board. After we finish all our work there, and after we look at the survey results, because we'll put up a survey with that same information, and then we'll gather all that information, and then we'll present a list of qualities, a draft list of qualities to the board based on all of this information. The other thing we do, which has been successful, is we also have student forums. So we're able to get input from students, and we've done those electronically, where all students from the high school will join in from the schools. We'll pull it all together and give the board a list of qualities and draft qualifications for the board. And then the board will make the final decision on that. And that's how we move forward on that. So we're doing a lot of that work. And what we found, it's very helpful for the board, because all of this information can be used after the search, after the new superintendent is hired. And because they have all the information, especially as it ties into the strategic plan. It's a great way to get community input.
You want to speak to the job description?
Yes. And what we'll do is that, and then we will look at your existing job description, if you have one. Some attorneys say they don't particularly need a job description for the superintendent because the statute is pretty specific. We'd work with Mr. Dye on that to see if he wants a job description, but we could format, and usually the board does that, working with the school board attorney and HR, and pulling together a job description for the superintendent. But the statute is pretty significant on that area. So,
And do you tie the evaluation in with that?
yes, what we do, we have FSBA actually has a workshop on evaluations, but we like to look at your existing evaluation, and we usually like to see that tied into the strategic plan goals. And we can work with you through that process right at the end. And that's another, I think, that's really been helpful, that the process continues after you make the decision. In fact, it's interesting, in Orange County, the board invited us in. Andrea met with the board to do get everything transitioned for the new superintendent, And they asked John and I to meet with their advisory group. They have a teacher advisory group and a support advisory group. We're going in there and still meeting with that group this year after the search because they really like the results we're getting from that. When we're finished with the search, our goal, as Andrea said, is to unite the board, get the community excited, unite the community, and also bring the staff together on that. And in most, every one of our searches, we've been able to
Can't
accomplish.
think of a time when we haven't.
We have been able to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
All right, Ms. Spry?
Oh, okay. Ms. Foreman
Prophetic, right?
had a lot of the same questions I did, so, but when you talked about the website portal, is that something that you're putting on your website or on ours?
Yours.
Okay. Okay, and that would be something that the community can see.
It's something that not only the community can see, but that when we go out into the community forums and into any of the input sessions, we direct them to monitor it and watch it and look for updates.
Okay, and because that ties into, if we wanted to host a community event to where you could say, this is what are you, get the feedback from people in the community, because I know before they've wanted that, and I'm hoping that we can offer that. Is that something that you would entertain doing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when we talk about community forums, it's
Right.
typically a community event.
At an arena where
Yeah.
people can come in,
Yes.
okay.
And I will say, we typically start each one of them with, your district needs a superintendent, here's the role of the superintendent and the board, here's where you can find the timeline, here are the upcoming activities. Today, we're doing the input piece, that's gonna go to the board. You know, we try to explain it to them.
Right.
And I will say this, sometimes board members ask us if they can attend those sessions.
Right.
And we discourage that. The reason we discourage it is because we don't want board members to be accused of directing conversations. We don't want people to say that because board members were there, they didn't feel comfortable saying something that they wanted to say. We also don't identify, I don't want to know if you're a teacher at Manatee High. That's irrelevant to me because what we don't want is people to say, well, it was a teacher at Manatee, so we're going to dismiss this piece of information. It's all a piece of data and it all comes in together. But we do start, and we think it's important to have those community input sessions. For you guys, you would probably want to have, I don't know, 3, 4 maybe. You'd want Ellenton area, you know, Bradenton area, the different Palmetto, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then advertising. What platforms do you use specifically for advertising? And, you know, what expected timeline do you typically use on a generic term? I mean, you've done this before, obviously. How long did you have those posts up and where?
We would recommend that as far as a time period for advertisement, at least 30 days, at least a month advertisement. Again, the longer you go, the more opportunities for persons to see that. Over the years, we've identified 5 venues that have been very productive. You know, of course, Ed Week, top school jobs. Ed Week is a big producer for us. There's the American Association of School Administrators, which is right below Ed Week. We also use the Hispanic. There's an Hispanic site that we use, also an African American site, because we want to try to get as much diversity as we can. And then there's one other site that I forget, but they are our kind of top providers, and we kind of look at over each search the number of applicants we get from each group. Thank you, Dr. Vogel. It is the American Association of School Administrators, the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, the Ed Week Top School Jobs, the Florida Association of School Administrators here, FASA, the National Alliance of Black School Educators, and of course Andrea also puts it on her site as well. So, and there also are a few, like the Broad Center, we would send information to them for them to pass out and to distribute to their group. And there's a few, you know, kind of groups that really are free sites for us to access to, again, make it as diverse as possible.
Okay.
We
Okay.
have about 15 more minutes, just FYI.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Vetting, when you do the vetting, and again, you're looking at the community this person lives in and has been a superintendent before, may not even be a superintendent.
Correct.
Maybe somebody in another state that has had educational background for a long period of time. Do you look into the community input from there, that there may have been something that why this person didn't get bumped up into that role or something? I mean, news articles or something to that effect.
Yeah,
we
we
look at that.
Absolutely. We look at everything, and Bill is our big research guy.
Okay.
He spends all day kind of trying to find different things. But what I will tell you is a lot of times what you read in either blogs or newspapers may not be the full story.
Right, that's
And
what
so
I'm saying.
we have
Do you
to dig a little
expand on
more.
that? I wouldn't want you to take the one-sided view. I would want you to, okay, what really happened here?
Excuse me, I think I mentioned before as well, anybody who's at this level applying, at this executive level, there will likely be lawsuits against them. They will be named in lawsuits. If they were a principal, something happened with a teacher or in the cafeteria, their name happens to be on that lawsuit. So when we look at these people, we look at what they're being named for in certain lawsuits to see if it's direct culpability or accusations of direct culpability, or if it's simply by virtue of their position
Right.
of leadership, because that too is something that will come, and board members just need to be prepared. There are going to be lawsuits with the name of most of your candidates on
And
them.
that was my next question, legal issues pending.
Yeah.
That might be out there, and even after, say they got into the semifinalist phase, and something came up, you would look at that, okay, something just popped up about this applicant, we probably need to do some research on that, but Ms. Foreman covered a lot of the same things, so I'll yield to whoever's next.
Well, and I will say with regard to legal actions, we did have an applicant, a finalist once, who had some legal actions pending. And I knew of these legal actions, and because when there's something of that nature, I see it as important enough, me, Andrea, not Bill or John, but Andrea, I call each board member and say, here's this legal action. You need to be aware of it. That doesn't mean you don't hire them if you choose to hire them, but you need to be aware, here's this legal action. And if something happens as a result of that, you're hiring this person with the knowledge that this is here.
Right.
So that's something I personally make sure to do, because I need to know that that's been done.
Thank you, that's
Yeah.
what I am. No, I'm good.
Ms. Messer?
I only have one question. And it really goes down to, and I know there's like a lot of variables that come down to the cost
Yes.
of your services. But the two other proposals we got did have at least some sort of estimate, and understanding that, okay, if we advertise here, it would cost more. Okay, if we bring in the candidates, that's gonna cost a certain amount, that can't really be factored in at this point. But is there some sort of estimate of fees, not counting the things that would be variables?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, I apologize because I actually thought that I had already provided that, but evidently.
Perhaps I missed it.
No, I think I didn't do it. So what I would say to you is that FSBA has a consultation fee, which is our flat fee, and that's $35,000. And I'll send all of this to your clerk so that you have it written down. I know you guys are going to be looking at things over the weekend. We budget advertising, depending on venues selected, between $2,000 and $5,000. So it will depend on the venues. It will also depend on the length of time, okay? Then we look at screening. We say 10, maybe semifinalists with the legal background search. So that's going to be $1,500 because they're $150 each. We look at interviewing costs. Typically, we look at, for 3 to 4 finalists, $4,000, about $1,000 a finalist. And then travel for our team to come to the meetings, depending on how many times you physically want us here and how many forums you have. Sometimes we try to have forums 2 days in a row so that we don't have to travel back and forth. We try to keep those things into account, and we look at travel for us between $3,000 and $4,000.
Okay, thank you so much. That was my only question.
I thought you gave a good presentation. I don't have any questions. I don't want that to be perceived as not being interested. I'm just kind of in receive mode now, and I'm learning about the process. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have any other questions that haven't been hit on. I guess the one question, just to make sure that I did hear this correctly, for the advisory council,
Yes, sir.
we can either have them be there to do the survey, pick questions to do the survey. Maybe they're there to vet, to look at things and give us an idea of, hey, here's the top 10 or 15. Obviously, there's only, what'd you say, 13 in Orange? That is kind of shockingly low, but not really, I guess, in the state of things. The advisory council is created by us.
Correct.
So my question would be, what would your recommendation be to the board to say, here's what an advisory council looks like? How many people, who consist of it, et cetera?
I'm going to let John answer this because he's our advisory council expert. But what I will also tell you is you don't have to have one.
Sure.
Pinellas chose not to. And one thing I do caution boards about today that I didn't caution boards about a year ago is when you put citizens in a situation like that, in today's climate, they become targets from other members of the community who were not selected in some cases. And so I just want to put that on your radar. You may be asking citizens to participate in a way that they may not be as warmly welcomed as they were 2 years ago, because somebody didn't get selected and somebody did get selected, and then there's an animosity in the community. Right. So I just put that caution, but I'll let John answer the question.
Thank you, Andrew. Typically, the size of the district kind of guides the membership enrollment. We're very comfortable working with anywhere from 15 to, say, 25 individuals. Most school districts who take an advisory committee approach would look at certainly, say, your chamber or chambers. You would certainly, or most districts, look at union representation as one person. If your instructional, your support staff union, your administrative group would probably need someone on that committee as well. So, right, a parent, PTA, that type of group. So typically they kind of look at 8 or 9 major organizations that they want represented, and then the board would pick one individual themselves to be, whoever, to go into that group to, get up around that 15 to 20 number.
Gotcha. My second question, as I was listening to that question being answered, is I go back to my own experience as a teacher. I don't ever remember as a teacher being asked about the superintendent search, and there was a couple when I was teaching. So what is your philosophy on teacher staff involvement? Because I do think, when I bring up staff too, I mean, even the cabinet staff and the administration staff downtown that is more direct working with superintendent can be somewhat of a sticky. I mean, personally, if I'm on the advisory and I'm the so-and-so and I didn't recommend this person that got hired, now all of a sudden am I going to be fired because I didn't? And I'm not saying that ever happens or has or whatever, but what is your philosophy on bringing the teachers, the faculty, the staff to get really, because they're the ones that are most affected as you go down the hierarchy. So how are they involved in this process?
Well, I want to go back to what I started with, which is the positive outcome of a superintendent search is the unity, internal and external communities around the school district. And so your staff groups, and typically there are 3, the administrators, the teachers, and then the support staff. You may have others, or some may be combined, districts organized differently. Those 3 groups are part of your internal community. And so if you want them to feel a part of the process, then you have to intentionally include them in some way. We believe, and we've found great success, with targeted focus groups. So typically what has happened in other districts is they would have one, and boys, gentlemen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically we try to sometimes they're all three on the same day. Maybe the support staff meets earlier in the day before the bus drivers have to leave. You know, we try to find a time when it's convenient for them to come together. Then typically your principal group, because middle schools typically end later, you know, has to be a little bit later in the evening, and maybe the district staff, because they're all on site, can meet in the middle, right? We try to put them all together if we can, because that saves time, energy, and effort. So we believe that it's important to ask them the same questions we're asking everybody else in the community. They're part of the community, and we want them to be a part of the process. We think that that is our first and strongest recommendation. If you decide to include them in your, if you choose to have an advisory committee and you decide to include them, we've not had any challenges with it along the way. We've had some districts that would choose to have maybe one representative from each of those three groups, but we've also had districts that said they wanted maybe a teacher but not the administrator or the support staff. We've also had board member, teacher of the year, yeah, that's a good example, where it's not necessarily related to your union. It depends on the relationship that you have with your collective bargaining agents and what the board wants. But we also are very clear that any community forums, this goes back to the question Ms. Spray was asking, any community forum that we have, staff is always welcome. They're part of the community as well as being a staff member. So if they're not comfortable coming to a targeted focus group, and some may be, some may not be, they're always welcome at the community forum, in which case they're with the whole crowd, and we're none the wiser if they're teachers or not. Many times they'll come up and say, hey, I'm a teacher at such and such. Don't tell me. But so we think you should include them for the climate that currently exists in the district and the climate you're trying to create.
Thanks. That's all I've got. You're right up to 10 o'clock, so
Thank you.
we pushed right to the brink. Thank you all very much for the presentation. It was great.
Very well.
And anything else you need to get with us, obviously, you can get with Amanda. And I believe it's Bill.
And Mr. Chair, if you have any additional questions, feel free to call.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll give you some time to get ready. Let's go on like a 5-minute recess.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yep.
5-minute recess.
Yep.
bring back the workshop. We have Mr. Adams, Bill Adams, and Mrs. Adams. Perfect, easy. That's easy for us to know from Hazard Young. Is it Atia? Atia and Associates. So you all are up. We'll go ahead and have you all do the presentation, and then we'll ask questions at the end, if that's okay. And you're good to go.
Good morning again for all of you. Happy New Year. And for those newly elected, congratulations and condolences, I guess, for the important work that you'll be doing over the next couple of years. I am Bill Adams, Vice President with Hazard Young and Atia. You have our resumes in the material we sent, but I was a superintendent for 36 years. And what may be somewhat unique about that, it was in the same district. So for 36 years in the same district. One of the things that was unique about that, at that time, and I was a superintendent in New Jersey, superintendents could actually gain tenure. And I was one that was grandfathered before they did away with that law. Only New Jersey and Alaska had that type of thing. And every year when our board would reorganize in November, we'd sit down and I'd say, well, I'm a tenured superintendent, but if your philosophy has changed, or if my philosophy no longer fits that, let's find a way to depart as ladies and gentlemen. That never happened, and I did retire from that district, but just prior to retiring from the superintendency in 2008, I began doing search work with a competitor of HYA, and then in 2014 joined HYA. The rest of it's in the resume. I'm joined, and I'm going to move to the next slide with Stacey Adams. Who is Stacey Adams? Well, she is a life partner. She is my wife. She's a senior associate with HYA, and she brings the other side of the education piece to us. She has an MBA from Nova Southeastern. Actually, she graduated what high school here? Not Hillsborough.
Chamberlain, Chiefs, right?
So anyhow, we heard AASA batted around earlier, and I was on their executive committee twice, two different non-consecutive terms, and ran for president of that organization. And we met at an AASA in San Antonio 16 years ago. And we'll be returning there in February when AASA reconvenes there for the first time since we met. But we are part of a team, and up on the board now, as I said, Stacey comes from the other side in that she worked for Teachscape, she worked for Cantor, and did a lot of professional development with teachers over the years. Uniquely, when we were both in New Jersey together, she got her principal certificate and is a certified principal in New Jersey. So he brings another perspective. I want to go to another member of our team, Karen Shaw. Karen Shaw is a former board member, board president from Morristown, New Jersey. She does a lot of private sector work, a lot of work with nonprofits, and joined us, also an MBA, joined us just 2 years ago as an associate, but brings the board perspective. So we have my perspective as a former superintendent, Stacey coming from the other side of the education piece, Karen as a former board member. Ted Blazing is the third member of the team from Florida. He's in Cape Coral, Florida, down near us in Naples. Ted was a Midwest superintendent, served as a superintendent both in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Ted's been with us for about 10 years and has done about 25 plus searches with us. Dr. Aresta Johnson, former Bridgeport, Connecticut superintendent, who is now a dean at Hampton College in Virginia, and she lives in North Carolina, Elizabethtown, North Carolina, where she originally went as an endowed distinguished professor there. She's done a number of searches with Stacey and I on our team. This would be the team from Hazard Young and Atia that would do the search if we were to be selected. We have roughly 125 associates nationwide, and certainly all of those associates would be available. So a little bit about Hazard Young and Atia and who we are. We've done about 1,600 searches, been around for about 37 years. Bill Atia is the only surviving original member of Hazard Young and Atia. Bill, I know we're not allowed to talk about ages, but Bill is approaching 90. He is still on the board of directors, and occasionally, especially in the Northeast, we will have boards. Is Dr. Atia still available for consultation if needed? And the answer is yes, he is. So that's a little bit about Hazard Young and Atia, who we are as a national firm. A little bit about some of our Florida work. I have participated in 2 Florida commissioner searches, actually while with another firm. We did Duval County while I was president, East Coast president for HYA, and actually Ted Blazing was one of our key people on that, and that we're the team that recruited Diane Green for that search. Again, while with another firm prior to going to HYA, did Broward County, and we as a firm have experience in Brevard, and this will be the second time we will have done Collier County. We are doing Collier right now. So that's an overview of some of the work. Also did some work in Indian River. We had some challenges there. However, the superintendent, David Moore, that they hired, is still there and is doing a great job. So that's the team. That's a little bit about HYA. One of the things that we think is important as you look at the team, and we know under Florida 119, everything is public, everything that we do is public. That will have an impact as we talk about engagement and recruitment. It will have an impact on the number of searches, as the Florida School Boards Association representative said. One of the things that we do provide, these are our email addresses and our cell numbers for the entire team. We're certainly available to the board. We will ask, and when we get into the process, we'll talk a little bit about that access liaison and how we do that and so forth. As I mentioned, we've done 1,600 searches. We do have a full support staff in Schaumburg, Illinois, that work behind us. Our sister company, the ECWR Group, is an education analytics firm. So we use research-based surveys. We use analytics both on where the applicants are coming from, as well as something I'll mention a little bit later about when we talk about recruitment and advertising, our website. I do want to mention, though, right now, and I'll repeat it later, our website attracts about 25,000 hits a month. We put our competitor searches up on the website. We do that deliberately. We made a business decision 4 years ago to do that. And what that has done for us is attracts a lot of potential applicants to at least look at our website. So we think that's an important attribute. So we are a national firm, certainly with both a regional and local focus. We use a lot of research-based techniques. Community engagement we'll talk about and how important that is at the front end of the search. That'll also lead to perhaps some other questions. You were talking with the last presenter about community committees, community advisory groups, and so forth. And we can talk about the differences, the pros and cons as you look at that. But community engagement, very important. As our transition, some of the information we'll learn from community engagement, you'll want to use when we get into transition with the successor superintendent. The executive due diligence piece can't overemphasize that enough. And when we get into that phase, I'll talk a little bit more about that. 4 phases of our search. Most firms do the same thing. They call them different things. First phase, engagement. That's that community piece, both internal and external stakeholders. Second phase, recruitment. Recruitment generally lasts, and by the way, the first phase generally lasts about a month. The recruitment phase, anywhere from 30 to 45 days. 60 days is a luxury, and generally anything beyond 45 days will not yield a whole lot in terms of additional applicants. The select phase, usually 3 weeks to a month. Some of that is conditioned upon the final phase of that last due diligence piece, which takes 7 to 10 days. And then transition phase, that's to take everything we learn from the engagement phase, sit down with you and the successor superintendent, and develop those goals for the first year or two as you move forward in conjunction with strategic plan and so forth. So there are the 4 phases, and as we go into each of them, Stace, do you want to talk a little bit about the engagement phase, and then I'll jump in?
Absolutely. So I'm going, again, good morning. I'm going to take a little bit different approach with regard to the engagement phase. I'm going to do something that's called backward design. For those of us who have been educators, we're a little familiar with that. What is the goal? What is the end goal in mind when we go out and we engage both the internal and the external stakeholders? Well, there's 3 things that Hazard Young Natia brings to the table that I think differentiates ourselves from some of the competitors, some of the people that you're going to speak to today, including Florida school boards. One is that we provide a leadership profile report as an outcome, and that is as the name says, a profile report. It will be a comprehensive report that will document who indeed we have spoken to during the engagement phase. So we'll talk about all the different focus groups that we will suggest that the board listen to. Obviously, your community is first and foremost, but even above that are your students. So the leadership profile report is this comprehensive report that'll have all of the comments by stakeholder group. No, we're not looking to pit anyone against each other, but it's important for the board, we believe, to hear what the different stakeholder groups are saying. We never identify by name or title, but we always, in this particular report, give the voices of each one of the different stakeholder groups for your purposes, as Bill has mentioned, when you go into especially that transition phase. The other document that we offer to you, we provide to you, is the desired characteristics. And I know there were questions about the job description, but as you move through this process, you're going to want a document that reflects that summative, that comprehensive, what is the community, the entire Manatee County community looking for, and we will provide that in this desired characteristics document. It will be used again in the recruitment phase, in particular as candidates begin to look and investigate Manatee County, because this will be a national search. People will need to understand what Manatee County is about. Yes, they'll be looking at your board meetings. Yes, they'll be doing some investigative, but this will be that summative piece, the desired characteristics. And then we'll also provide to you, if you should choose to go with our research-based survey, a survey report. And the survey report also acts as, if you will, a state of the district. Bill will speak a little bit about some of the components that go into the survey report, but it'll give you a state of what your constituency groups by category feel in particular about the district. And then the desired characteristics they are looking for with regard by stakeholder group for the successor superintendent. And so this allows us to, if you will, triangulate the engagement phase process. So we'll have the leadership profile report, we'll have the desired characteristics report, and we'll have the survey report. So what goes into each one of these when we set out to engage? Yes, we definitely want this to be a unifying, we want this to be exciting, we want people to get behind it, but we also want to be strategic about it. We want to make sure we reach each of the stakeholder groups. One, of course, being you, right? We will interview each one of you separately to understand where you're coming from, what your inside thoughts are about the direction of the district. We ask the same 5 questions of all of our constituency groups, but this allows for a one-on-one opportunity to really bear witness to those representatives, your constituency groups, right? who you're representing. In any event, let me just say that the first question we asked is, what are the strengths of the district? What are those things that you're proud of? What are those things that you want to build upon as you're moving forward? What are those challenges is the second question. So from your perspective, where you are, what are those things you need to address, both short-term and long-term? What are those desired characteristics that you're looking for in the successor superintendent would be the third question. The fourth question is, what else do we need to know about the community? And again, as you can see how competitive the marketplace is right now, you've heard, unfortunately, a low number of applications in a recent search. We'd like to say that our expectation would be a little bit higher than that on average. I would say, Bill, wouldn't you, around 30 to 40, again, through our extensive network. But in the process of recruiting for those applications, what else do we need to know about the community, about the district that you believe would be helpful? And then the last is, as was mentioned previously, is there anyone that you would like us to reach out to? It's just a name. It's not certainly, we'll let them know that their name has been mentioned, and it's an opportunity to offer that. But we ask those same 5 questions of all of the stakeholder groups, and there's where I go back to be strategic about it. We will work with your internal liaison to identify, along with you in our planning meeting, those stakeholder groups. So definitely teachers, for sure. And we also recommend doing an all call with regard to teachers. Let the voices be heard. We recommend meeting with the cabinet, of course. We recommend meeting with your union leadership. We also recommend meeting with your support staff, whether they're site-based or district-based, right? We want to hear voices from everyone across the district internally as well as externally. And therein we'll work with both you and your internal liaisons to identify those community members that you'd like us to meet with in targeted focus groups and or if necessary one-on-one. If one-on-one interviews are necessary with your governance members, we could do that as well. In any event, we also prioritize the student voice as well as those community groups that you mentioned. Now, we would recommend in something like this a hybrid approach, both virtual and in person, whatever accommodates the stakeholder groups. And we've found success in that hybrid approach, in that we have busy lives. We have children, right? We're running them from here to there, taking them to activities. So to be able to jump on into a virtual session is very convenient, as well as being able to meet face-to-face with your constituency groups. And we can work through all of that after we work through the planning phase. So as I've mentioned, the planning phase the planning meeting is a very important part of this process. We're happy to meet. I know there's a timeline here that you're looking to meet. We're happy to meet as early as next week if you need it to, or shortly thereafter. So to get this rolling. So with that said, the 3 documents at the end, the leadership profile report, the desired characteristics, and the survey report will help drive the recruitment process that Bill will talk about in a minute. And I was typically going to say, is there any questions? But I think we'll save those for the end. Yeah.
Thanks, Stacey. Before we jump to the next phase, Stacey did a comprehensive coverage there, but I'll just mention that leadership profile is very, very important. That gives you all of the different stakeholder groups. We recommend, as soon as that's completed, and within 3 weeks, within 10 days or so of appointment, that's why Stacey said we're available next week if you decide you want to you hire us and you want to have a planning meeting. But then what we would do is take about 3 weeks to a month to do all of that stakeholder engagement. That's very important before we start. That answers and would answer a lot of questions about do we use advisory groups and so forth, because you get all of that information. But that document that she talked about will also be used to help formulate and develop questions for candidates later on in the process. And it will also be used when you do the transition meeting with the new superintendent. Those desired characteristics, which will be a 1 or 2 page document, that'll be the guide in terms of the whole recruitment process that we jump into at the next point. So the recruitment phase. Once you approve those desired characteristics, we publish them and we use that to move forward. We begin the recruitment phase. One of the things that we'll decide at that, or that you'll decide at that planning meeting, what do we want to do in terms of advertising? And we offer, in the proposal, you have 3 different advertising packages. We recommend one of them. However, if any of them are good, why do we recommend the one we recommend, the most comprehensive one? Well, Education Week is one of the primary sources across the country. We advertise in Education Week. It comes out 39 times a year. We advertise in Education Week in every other issue. So during the length of the search with that package 3 that we propose, you'll be in every time. And what we try to do is drive people to your website, the Manatee School District website, and to our website. That's important. The in-print and in terms of a block ad, that's important. That gives credibility to a national search. But it's really driving people to and letting potential candidates know of what's available. We also use AASA, and that's part of that proposal in both Package 2 and Package 3 that we have in our proposal. And in both cases, you're up for 30 days online, as well as in the Package 3, you're online during the entire length of the survey. The other package, which is probably one of the least expensive out there, is ALIS, that was mentioned earlier, the Association of Latino School Administrators, and the National School District Black Alliance of Educators. That group, we have actually associates that are active members of both of those organizations. And we propose that as part of the advertising package. Probably one of the things that is most important is, as I mentioned earlier, and it's highlighted here, and that's the HYA job search website. 25,000 hits a month. And we find when it comes to recruitment, Florida and Minnesota are 2 of the most difficult states because everything's public. Now, one of the things that we don't do, we don't publicize the applications and/or resumes as they come in. First of all, there are roughly 6 of the 27 counties that appoint superintendents right now that are looking for superintendents, or will be shortly. And what happens when you publish them, search firms look at what's published in other districts. Now, it is public information, and under 119, we have to meet both the spirit and intent of the law. It doesn't mean you have to publish. They're accessible if someone opens them or asks for them, and then they become public information. The other thing that happens in Florida and Minnesota searches in particular, candidates wait until the end of the search to apply, so they're exposed for a lesser period of time. And that's fine, as long as you follow both the rules of engagement in terms of Florida 119 and the spirit as well. So we're out there with a proactive recruitment. There are people and leaders that may be great leaders, but the wrong fit. And we heard fit mentioned before, and fit is critically important, not only of the search firm, but certainly more important of the candidate. So fit becomes critically important, and that's why that leadership profile and desired characteristics that Stacy mentioned are so important. So as we recruit, we'll reach out to leaders that don't know they should be looking into Manatee County. Well, why should you look into Manatee County, a district of 51,000, almost 52,000 students, what, a $1,138,908 budget? Why this district? Why, as you look at the number of A schools, the number of B schools, the number of C schools, et cetera, and I believe one failing school, why? Part of our job will be to develop a profile and develop a marketing process to market the district, to attract candidates, and to get them to, first of all, discuss the position and then to apply for the position. We do multiple things when we screen, interview, and do reference checks as part of the recruitment process. What are they? Well, the first thing we do, and most search firms, most headhunting firms, whether it's in the public sector or private sector, the initial time that they look at an application is about 90 seconds. So what pops out in that first 90-second review? And then what causes you to go back and go back and go back? Well, you look at things that fit those desired characteristics that you, the board, identify and that your stakeholders identify that you ultimately agree to as a board. Very important. The second part of that piece, as we go out there, is to Google every candidate before we even talk to them. Because one of the questions we ask when we start the interview process, we'll say, what are people saying about you when we Google you? And before you answer the question, we've already done it. And we let them know we've already done it, just in case. Because you need to know everything. In this environment today in particular, everything becomes public somehow at some time. It's so important. So we do that as part of the first round of looking, interviewing, and then reference checks. We have 7 basic questions that move up into a field of potentially 17 when we do reference checks. Anyone that presents 4 references, they can't present 4 people that are going to speak highly of them. If you don't get someone in that initial group that's going to speak highly of a candidate, then the candidate's probably not worth pursuing further. But one of the last questions we ask each is, who else might know this candidate and may even have a different perspective than you? And we'll pursue that to that second level of initial reference, along with the Google. Stacy will probably mention a 360 approach to that. When you look at a 360 approach, you want somebody, you want to look out at references, a direct report, someone to report to. You want to look at what parents are saying, what students are saying, what teachers are saying, and so on. So it's a 360 approach when you do that. Stacy can elaborate on that a little bit more if you're interested in that 360 approach. So that gets us into the recruitment, the recruitment phase. And our job, generally at the planning meeting that Stacy talked about in that engagement phase, one of the things we'll ask you is, how many candidates do you want us to bring you in terms of a slated group of candidates? Obviously, we bring you every application. And you have the opportunity to certainly go over everyone, including those that shouldn't have applied for the job because they're simply not qualified. We'll give you a thumbnail on every one of them and make them available. Although we'll bring you a slate, you can add anyone, and we'll use, when we get into that next phase of the process that we'll talk about, the selection phase, we'll use a process to help you reach consensus called the Delphi technique. So I'm going to move into that next piece, the select phase. So we'll present a slate usually of 8 to 12 potential candidates. We'll facilitate and be present during all interview and discussion sessions as part of that. We will have done the background checks, and that's different than that final phase of what we call a due diligence process. So that will happen, and as I said, that first phase, usually 3 weeks to a month, engagement phase. Recruitment, 45 is really comfortable for us, and we're shooting for a July 1 start date with a proposed calendar, but that certainly can be adjusted. And then that select phase, roughly 3 weeks to a month. And then once that's done, usually you can wrap things up in about 2 weeks. That includes getting the final due diligence report done and contract negotiations. So select phase. when we, before I actually, let's go back. Before we leave the select phase, one of the things we'll do with you is suggest, you don't have to use it, using a Delphi process. On each candidate we present, you'll have 5 documents. You'll have what we call, in our psych department likes this, how would you want Bill Adams or Stacy Adams or Karen Shaw or Ted Blazing or Dr. Johnson, Arrested Johnson, to introduce you to the Manatee School Board? Take one page, double-spaced, 12-point, and introduce yourself. You'll have that document. You'll have a document that is a letter of interest based on the desired characteristics. And we ask you to look at it based on the desired characteristics. You'll have their resume. You'll have an expanded application, which is we use Frontline, and it's an expanded application that, depending on the candidate and how much they say, you'll have that document. And then you'll have a document, what references said, which is a summary of what references said. Generally, we like you to have that about 48 hours before you meet. And it all depends on what Mr. Dye would say about that and when that can happen and so forth. We will also, as I said, present you with every application before we ask you to do the Delphi technique. And what is that? We would ask each of the 5 of you individually to compare. And let's say there are 10 slated candidates that you ultimately agree on slating before you start the interview process. Independently, compare candidate 1 to 2. Select one of the 2. But I like both of them. Which one do you like better? I don't like either one of them. Well, which one do you like more than the other one? And then go through it for 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, etc. And then what we'd like you to do is, how many times do you select that person? 2 to 3 and so on. We collect those up, we'll put them up so everyone can see them, then you start your discussion. And really what you're using that for is a tool for the digital screen or the old paper screen as to who you want to interview. We recommend generally on that first round, and it's up to you, interviewing 6 or 7 candidates. We recommend doing it at a single seating. Give us a whole day. We're available, and some boards will say, well, we work, we can't. We're available to do that on Saturday, and we have some boards that will take a Saturday. We'll take any day, but we recommend doing it in a solid day. It's a full day of work. It's about 7 hours if you do 6. First round of interviews, usually based on and we will supply you with a document. It's a 21-page document of the do's and don'ts of interviews, and we'll also provide you with suggested questions centered around several themes. One is vision and values. One is leadership and management. One is communications. One is governance and governance relationships. One is student life. And one is finance and facilities. We'll provide you with roughly 80 questions to start that development of questions that you'll ask during that first round. Usually in that first round of interviews, it's about an hour. Usually you'll come in, there's the niceties of introducing yourself, the candidate, and often the first question might be, we've read 5 documents about you, we've Googled you, we know a lot about you. Tell us something in 3 minutes or so that we don't know about you that would help us better understand who you are as a leader, who you are as a person, and your level of integrity. Then you would begin your questioning during that first round, and usually if there's 5 of you, and you each ask 3 questions, and they take 3 minutes to answer each question. Do the math, that's about 45 minutes. They've taken 3 to 5 minutes at the front end. You usually want some time at the back end, why I should be, or that person should be, the next superintendent of the district, and then some time to ask you questions. From that, when we get into that select piece, we would ask you to again do the Delphi technique. Decide who you want to bring back for the next round, usually 2 or 3 candidates. In that next round, we would suggest, again, full day interviews, 2-hour interviews, for the applicants selected to come back. That second round, we suggest giving the candidate an opportunity to make a presentation. The easy one, and we give them time to prepare, obviously. They'll have at least a week in between. What is your 100-day entry plan? That's an easy one. There may be one that's more germane to the county. There may be a challenge that you want to throw out there. We know there's a number of capital projects right now, and there's a slow growth in terms of additional students coming in every year, except for the 21 where there was a slight drop. So you may ask some question about that, but give them about 20 minutes to present, and then what you'll be looking for is for you then to ask questions based on the presentation. And usually, if there are committees, you may have each of the committees select questions to ask, or you may, one part of it could be, well, during the first round in your 3-minute response, you didn't fully answer this. Could you elaborate on that? Because you will have taken notes. We'll provide a script for you based on what we mutually agree to. And then there'll also be a chance perhaps for some scenarios if you decide that's what you want. The last part of it, we recommend allowing about 20 minutes of that 2-hour presentation for the candidate to ask you questions, or if you prefer, and when we did the Commissioner Rhode Island search, the Board of Regents did this. They interviewed the candidate for 2 hours, and the candidate interviewed the Board of Regents for 1 hour. That's about that match and fit. Some boards aren't comfortable saying, well, we want to be interviewed, so we say, well, then ask the board questions. If you become comfortable with that Delphi process, we don't necessarily recommend it. Some people want to use the Delphi process even though you're only working with 3 or 2. But that then, when you get to that point, the next phase would be a conditional selection. Conditioned on what? Well, conditioned on successful negotiations, but more importantly, the title. When you buy a house, you're required to get the title company to come in and do a process. We recommend doing a third-party background investigation on the finalists before a commitment's made. There's a cost to that. The comprehensive one is $1,950. Private investigator will go to the county, wherever it is, in the United States, and we'll start the investigation there. You have in our proposal and in the supporting HYA search document a whole list of things that covers. But briefly, it's criminal, civil, financial, driving record. It's a credential verification. The institution or university or agency that issued the credential is verified and certified, as well as the credential the candidate claims to have. There's also a 5-year media review and a social media review. That's what we call the title policy. That's critically important before you make that final decision, even though we will have done a lot of that work ahead of time. And then we do offer some optional services in terms of governance workshop, goal setting, in addition to what's included, and that's meet with you to do a transition meeting, and we do governance dashboards and those kinds of things as well. Cost structure. The fee in the fee proposal is right there. It's $39,700. That includes all of the search work in terms of including up to 32 one-hour sessions as part of the engagement piece. The advertising piece, there are 3 options there. We've recommended the third option plus Alice NASB. That package comes to a little over $7,000, and you have that in a separate sheet that we provided with that. Candidate expenses depend, and you can set top stops on that. It depends on where the candidates come from. We put in about $3,500 for our expenses, meaning travel expenses at the IRS rate, which is now up to 65 cents a mile. But we believe that piece can be reduced if we focus with the 3 of us that are Florida-based, meaning two of us in Naples and one of us in Cape Coral, both in the same area a little bit further south. That's overall our cost structure, and I can go into the individual pieces of that if you have that with questions. And questions.
Thanks. We'll start the opposite way. Mr. Tatum?
All right, thank you. See if put my
I have you as
eyes
a
on here
cleanup.
real quick. So how's your current workload? We heard from the last organization that I think they could handle it, but there's a little just problem, not potential problem, but they're concerned about their workload. How do you feel about your workload?
Well, first of all, we have 125 associates nationwide. We're talking 5 specific assigned to this. And I can tell you right now, Dr. Johnson is not doing any other searches. Karen Shaw is doing 2 searches in New Jersey right now, and both of those searches would be finished before she completes here. Ted is currently doing 1 search right now and would be available throughout. Stacy and I are both working Collier County, and we're doing the Collier County search, as is Dr. Johnson. We don't see that as a challenge at all. I'm finishing up Washington Township, New Jersey. That will be done by the end of the month. Stacy is finishing up Ridgewood, New Jersey, and that will be done by early February. So we're in good shape. Firm is in good shape in that right now the firm is doing 24 searches nationwide, and all but 4 of those are superintendent searches.
So would you two be on the team though?
Yes.
Who would be the primary team, do you think?
The 2 of us and Ted Blazing.
Who's based out of Florida too? Is
Yes.
that over in Cape Coral, as you said?
Cape Coral, yes, sir.
Great. All right, thank you. Let's see. I've heard this mentioned twice now. The first time I heard it, I was kind of surprised, and then I pondered it a little bit, and then I heard it mentioned again. I understand students to some degree are stakeholders. Obviously, in the school system, they're part of the. Coming from a military background, I'm thinking to myself, allowing the privates to pick the general, so to speak, or at least have an input on picking the general. How does that work? I understand there are stakeholders, and I'm just curious if someone could help me understand how do the student stakeholders play into the selection of a superintendent?
Sure. It's the student voice. It's the voice of your stakeholders, as all of them, and they're the clients ultimately that you're serving, right? That's why we're all here, is for the students. And so we ask them to have voice, but not necessarily voice in the selection process. So to give voice into what they see as being desirable character traits, what they see to be challenges, which is usually very eye-opening from their perspective, and that's something that a successor superintendent would know. And what are the strengths of their school district? What do they like? Why do they like coming to school, right? What are those things that motivate them? And again, their perspective, I think, is very critical and important in someone who is going to lead the school district that is here to provide an education for them, the client, ultimately. And so much more on the voice of them, not necessarily them playing a part in selecting the ultimate leader, but to be a part of the process.
Good information. Yeah, like I said, I'm new to the process.
And just to add very clearly, ultimately, statutorily, there's 5 people that are responsible for the selection. But it is important, that's why the engagement phase out front is so important, to know what your community, and maybe this triggers another question about the survey and the research-based survey in particular. I heard the Florida School Boards Association talk about looking at the old SWOT analysis, and definitely you look at your strengths, your challenges, your opportunities and your threats. Sometimes an opportunity is a threat, sometimes a challenge can be an opportunity. So you look at that, but very important when you look at the research-based side of that as you make your decision, The research-based survey that we use, we go back to what used to be the old ISLIC standards that were used for school leadership for years until about 2015. And then, and our survey is based on research. We have our own research paper. We have a copy of it here if you want us to leave it with what to look for in the next superintendent. But we currently also rely on the Chief State School Officers Group, the National School Boards, and AASA, a midrid of organizations which develop the current standards for educational leaders, the national standards that they use. Our survey is based upon that. And there are there's 10 characteristics. Those characteristics are all important, but we ask stakeholders to identify the 4 most important to them. But you'll look at each group. Each group, one group will be your community members at large. Another group may be your business people as we look at the different employers. Now, you are the largest, or very close to being the largest employer in the county. But we'll look at what each of those groups said, including students. And you make that decision then as you look at the characteristics that ultimately the 5 of you decide on. Okay.
And then maybe for Ms. Saunders, the budget for this is something that came up probably after we put our budget together. It's a certain amount of money. It's not a huge amount of money, but how do we budget for this? Where does the money come from?
I'll make certain that I move appropriate funding into your budget cost center whenever you deem what firm and the cost that's available. So that won't be a problem.
It comes out of the general.
Comes out of the general budget, yes.
When you said you move it into our cost center, there's a account that's called school board
Yes.
business or something like that, and the
Yes.
money gets moved over there.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And then I was curious, do you do any other headhunting type of jobs other than education related type things like superintendents, commissioners of education? Or are you specifically focused on education job searches?
Education is our focus.
Is your focus?
Commissioners of Ed, I've personally done 5 of those, but commissioners, the predominant work we do is superintendent searches. We do some central office. We do one of the hardest areas right now for us are high school principals.
Oh, wow.
Very difficult.
You ever do people like chief financial officers or other senior staff members of a school?
Oh, sure. Your chief financial, school business administrator, yeah, your top financial officers, yes.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Messenger?
I mean, I don't know if I have any questions. I've taken it all in. You did say that you poached Dr. Green from us, so I'll try not to hold that against you. We did benefit from that, so I'll take that. But
She stayed in Florida.
I suppose my only question then goes to how often do you poach from a current superintendent in Florida?
We will sign a contract with you that will say we will not go back during the life of their contract, their first contract. So we won't go back at all. If someone applies, we can't stop them from applying. We will not slate them. We'll provide you with the application and we'll tell you why we didn't slate them. But we will not go back during the life, and that's one of the 3-way guarantees that we offer. So we do not poach.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Right?
I have a couple of them. Just like candidates, I mean, we were given a list of the companies that were going to come and present today, and I've done some preliminary research on your company, and there's so many addresses, I don't know which address. You say you're from here, but what we were given, you're from Scanberg, Illinois. Then I found a Texas address, and I noticed that there was some negative reports about your firm in Texas. I'm just stating what I read online. And you said that you were working with how many, trying to find how many superintendents right now?
The firm?
For the firm. Okay, because I just counted 40 on your website? Maybe some of them are still out there and they just haven't been pulled, or what?
If you go to our website, we list our searches in the first group. There's more than 40 on there.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's assistants and superintendents. A lot of them are in big cities, from what I can see.
We list our competitor searches on our website. They're not all HYA searches.
Okay, then that makes more sense why there's so many on there then. So you're listing not only yours, you're listing
Any opening, right?
any opening broad nationally then, is what you're listing. Okay, but
In
you're,
other words, if Florida school boards or McPherson and Jacobson, that you're going to interview later, if they want to advertise on our website, they can. We encourage it.
right,
Because it drives people, it drives candidates to our website. And as I mentioned, we get 25,000 hits a month, 25,000 views a month. The first 24 in that group, we always post ours first, our HYAs. And then look at the rest of them. If you don't see HYA, it could be Nebraska School Boards Association. It could be whoever's doing the job.
okay. And then you're charging us a fee for the search, and I meant to ask the other business this too. Are you charging the candidate any, or the applicant any kind of fee to, be there? Okay, I want to hire you to get me a job or anything, okay.
No.
I just want to make sure we're not double doing that.
No, and if I could just respond to that.
Yeah.
In the private sector, it's quite common that search firms charge the candidates, whether it's in the legal field or whether a healthcare field or whatever. In the public sector, that generally is not done. We certainly do not charge a fee. We're not running any superintendent academies or anything of that. We don't have a cadre of candidates that we wheel out for each search. And certainly we're not involved in an old boys or an old girls network.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all I had, because I saw all of them. I'm like, wow, you got a lot on there, so that makes more sense to me. Okay, that's all I had.
Ms. Farley?
You're not gonna take a turn?
I'm last.
Oh, all right, okay, thank you. All right, yeah, I do have some. Okay, you had stated that you don't publish the applications as they come in. Does that mean, because we're gonna have a portal on our, we'll have a page on our website for the community to follow. Does that mean that there will be applications that we don't even list the person's name if they don't make the first cut?
That's entirely up to you, the board and your solicitor, on how you do that. We recommend that if they don't make the cut, that you don't publish them. But if someone opers or requests it, you probably have to provide that information.
Okay, but you wait for it to be requested, okay.
And may I just add, there's a privacy for the candidates as well in their exposure, and so that's a part of it.
No, I understand that, and
Right.
now in Florida, if it's a college, they don't have to, it's
It
private.
just changed, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it couldn't get changed in time for us, for our arts, okay. A question about the team. You'd stated on here that Stephanie Norwalk serves as the project manager. What function is the project manager?
Essentially for any admin work that we need out of the Schaumburg office. And when you talked about various addresses,
yeah.
the office is Schaumburg, Illinois, 14-something Woodfield, yeah, in Schaumburg, Illinois. She's there to provide any support that we need administratively.
Okay. The team, then, I take it, is going to be you, Dr. Adams, Ms. Adams, and Dr. Blessing.
Yes, as well as Karen Shaw and Dr. Johnson.
Okay. I watched the Collier County interview that you had, and you had stated there that you would be exclusive to Collier County until the select phase. Does that mean we won't have you until that point?
So Dr. Adams will provide oversight. He's the VP he's a VP in the organization. You'll be mostly working with myself, Dr. Blazing, Karen Shaw, as well as Dr. Johnson. But Bill provides oversight. Obviously, he's got the experience, the expertise, and the longevity in the firm. So, but your contact here, hence my being here today, as well as Dr. Blazing, will be more of your, and Karen and Aresta will be more of your contacts, your direct contacts.
Okay. Then for yours, I was noticed on your resume that you stated you were involved in the Broward selection process as a partnership with Ray and Associates. Could you explain how that worked?
So, yes, we worked on the Broward search through Ray and Associates when Dr. Runcie was brought in. And so I was out there I was out there doing the focus groups, et cetera, as well as doing the presentations to the board back when Dr. Runcie was selected.
As an employee or contract?
Well, we're associates. Yeah, we're associates. No, not a direct employee, so we're associates.
So you were not involved in the selection of the current supervisor?
No. Oh, no. No, I wasn't on the board.
No, that was Ray and Associates with Vicky Cartwright, who
Right.
was internal. No, we were not involved in that at all. And I can, if I could, provide some clarity. When we worked for Ray and Associates, I was their East Coast director. Gary Ray was the owner of the company then. He is now with GR Associates. Mike Moran now runs Ray Associates, so it's a different company than the company we work with, and I've not been involved, nor has Stacy, since 2014.
All right. I do have, just as you Google candidates, I Googled your firm. And
Yeah,
there's press going, going back a number of years of where searches were not successful because candidates, they had some baggage that didn't get caught. What changes have you made to prevent that? Because, I mean, it's going back a few years, but.
Well, one of the most important things that we do now, as I mentioned when we begin the process, there is a cross-check in terms of a number of ways that we Google people out front. There's a lot more cross-checking than there ever was in the past. Now, we've done 1,600 searches, and I would say that of those 1,600 in the last 30-odd years, you'll probably find about 12 or so that didn't go well. I can tell you one of the things that we've done, some of those associates are no longer working with us. Because the thoroughness of the background checks and vetting people is critical. And that's why when I mentioned what we do with that last part of the process, that title policy, that's an investigation into every aspect of the individual's life. So one of the things that we do that most other, the $1,950 is a lot of money for that final candidate, or sometimes boards will do on the top three. And one of the reasons that we recommend that is that while we do reference checks and background checks, we're talking about private investigators going in and doing that. So that's part of it. Part of it is that our protocols are checked a lot more carefully now. It's one of the reasons we use people in the Schaumburg office to assist with some of that background that goes beyond the reference checking. It's critically important.
Okay, why wouldn't you, because that's your reputation, why wouldn't you require the full-blown vetting as opposed to recommending it?
Well, because it simply as part of, we offer a search fee and we provide options. One of the strongest recommendations we make in that due diligence piece is do the background. You can do a lesser background check that costs $1,100 that doesn't include the media review or the social media review. That social media review is critically important. There's a whole bunch of filters that are used for that. And if something comes up with one of those filters, then our investigator looks into that further.
Okay, can you describe your, the guarantee that you offer now?
Yeah, it's essentially a three-way guarantee. First part of it is that we will not go back and poach during the life of the first contract. And the only way that can happen is if you provided written authorization that we could do that. Now, we can't stop someone from applying, but we will not slate that individual. And we will inform the board, hey, they just took a job, so-and-so. And so that's part of the, and that's in writing in the contract that if you award it to us. The second part of it is that if the person leaves for any reason during the first year, we'll come back and do the search for nothing in terms of the fee except for expenses, advertising, that kind of thing. So that fee would be totally waived. We'll do it for a second year if a majority of you stay in place. Now, if you have an election next year and 3 of you change, there could be a change and the board could come in and make a decision. So if a majority of the board's in place, it's a 2-year guarantee across the board, no questions. Third part of the guarantee is we will match competitors if it's the same in time and scope of services. We'd need to look at their proposal, assess it, and then come back and either make a counteroffer or say, no, we cannot match it. So that's our 3-way guarantee.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Question I had was with Collier County. I know you were awarded it. You said this is the second time?
Yes, did it 11 years ago.
Okay, so that was going to be my question. How long ago was it before?
Current superintendent who submitted a resignation to retire last July, to retire June 30 this year. She has since left when the new board was appointed. We did that search 11 years ago. And she was there 11 years, did a nice job. Last year, she was Florida State Superintendent of the Year, and she was also Final Four of National Superintendent of the Year. Different philosophy with the board that has come in. We were actually employed by the board that was the prior board. The board that came in decided to keep us and to move forward with their search.
Great. That was my question. Appreciate it. Anything else from anyone that came up?
Good.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. Safe travels.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity. Just one question. Will you be making a decision today, or will it be at a later time? Or
The board meeting on Tuesday.
Tuesday? Okay.
Next week.
We'll be watching.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
So we have 11:10. So about 5 minutes ahead of time is our break until noon. So we are in recess.
We're good till noon?